these are the videos I was talking about. I'm sorry, when it comes to this dog, um, there's really nothing I can do about the loud whispering sound. It's the pipes for the hot to, with the steam in it, steaming them so they can warm up these buildings. So I'm sorry if you can't hear it, but you can see the titles if you want to check them out.
Australian Shepherd. With his unusual markings and piercing blue eyes, it's hard to ignore the Australian Shepherd. He is smart.
Now that dog right there, I remember. I don't know the name of it, but it was a slave movie. But it had a dog that looked exactly like that. That was unleashed to go chase down the runaway slaves. So that was something that came back to mind when I seen that.
Australian Shepherd. He is smart, exuberant, and blessed with outlandish amounts of stamina. While he's called the Aussie, he's as American as apple pie. Hi, welcome to Animal Facts. Today we look at 10 fun facts about the eye-catching bobtail herder, the Australian Shepherd.
Let's get started.
But before we start, take a moment to like and subscribe for more fun facts.
Let us know about your doggy in the comments below. Number 10.
The history of the Australian Shepherd may be a bit cloudy and borderline mythical, but one thing is for sure, the Aussie is not from Australia. In fact, the breed we know today is distinctly American. The Scotch Collie, Border Collie, and English Shepherd are all believed to have contributed to the Australian Shepherd bloodline, as stockmen worked to create an alert, intelligent, agile, and adaptable dog ideal for herding in varying terrain, as herders from France and Spain settled the American West by way of Australia. The dogs are called Australian
See that? And that, listen to that. With using this dog, France and Spain settled the America West. And that's what I'm talking about. Doesn't that seem wrong? I mean, think about it. You would come in. You would come. I mean, why would you take that route first instead of taking on the East Coast when you're supposed to be right next door and supposedly you sail from there to there? I don't know. Watch.
Shepherds, because they were associated with Bosch Shepherds that came through Australia to the United States in the 1800s. It was first recognized by the AKC.
And we know around the 1800s, we now have a clear time where we see it. It was around then. That's when the whole, big push for, slavery and racial division and all this other stuff really took place. Colored lines and things like that. Was it Ron March was one of his videos? He explains. Was it 1853? Was the year where they started the whole Revolutionary War in Kansas, because the Democrats finally took the state of Kansas and they wanted slavery, but there was an issue over who would be the slaves, because plenty of whites took to Kansas to live there because it was outside of the reach of slavery, because they had left the East Coast so they could be free from slavery, the so-called white people, were living there. And once the Democrats took that, the whites didn't want to be slaves anymore, and they weren't going to be slaves, and they needed a set of slaves. They already had blacks out there, so then there was a whole fight that broke out over who could they enslave.
In 1991.
Number 9.
Being a working dog, Australian Shepherds need a job to do. Aussies are bred to herd, and if you don't give yours a job to do, he will find one on his own. Inadequate mental stimulation and exercise causes destructive behavior and misbehavior. Be prepared to give him at least 30 minutes of brisk exercise daily.
Number 8.
If your Aussie chooses you as his favorite person in the family, you will find yourself with an extra shadow. He will follow you everywhere, from room to room, indoors and out, and even to the potty. The Australian Shepherd loves to be close to his family members.
Number 7.
Despite his love for his humans, the Australian Shepherd is a very shy, apprehensive dog around strangers. Because of this, it is important to socialize your Aussie as a puppy and expose him to as many people and situations as possible.
Number 6.
It's all in the eyes. When people think of the Aussie, they normally think of his crystal blue pupils. In fact, some Native American tribes call the breed the ghost eye dog. because of his blue, fountain-like eyes. They were said to be considered sacred. His eyes may also be brown or hazel, and it's not uncommon for his eyes to be heterochromatic.
Ghost eyes, and that's interesting too because I don't remember how it's spelled. Somebody else might remember it. But if you go to the online etymology, the correct way to spell white, not the WHITE, but the correct way to spell it for people that claim they're white, it says that they're also like spirits. They're supposed to be walking spirits or something like that, like not a real person, but walking dead people, things like that. And that also makes you think about like the whole eye thing, right? Because don't they tell you that blue eyes is like a symbol of what was it, like all the what are they called, forget what it's called, the living organisms or whatever that make up your eye, that because like the colored eyes, brown and and these hazel and stuff like that, means your eyes are alive, right? And blue eyes and gray eyes mean your eyes are dying or are dead. I know what I'm talking about. I looked up a video a while back on blue eyes and stuff like that, and green eyes and hazel and brown. Because one of the things that shocked me was my whole life I've been told I had black eyes, and it was only until I, met my wife about 5 years ago. She was like, "No, you got a dark brown eyes," and I stared at them in the mirror. Sure enough, she was right. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm thinking to myself, like, what was everybody else looking at, And then so I started looking into eyes, and I thought the eye whole thing was fascinating, and how the blue eyes are also, can be related to fish genes and stuff like that.
Meaning that both eyes are different colors.
Number 5.
Of course, a hardworking West Coast dog is going to end up in Hollywood. Of notable celebrity Aussie owners are Mel Gibson, Jennifer Connelly, Steven Spielberg, Alyssa Milano, and Trace Adkins.
Number 4.
They make great family pets for active families. But there are a few things left over from being a herding dog you should know. They do tend to bark a lot, but this can be overcome with proper training. While Aussies do well with other pets, they may chase and nip them due to their herding instincts. Your kids may not be immune to this herding.
Number 3.
They love to learn and are eager to please, so training an Aussie is usually a pleasant experience. They're super responsive to positive feedback and praise. For anyone interested in competitive dog sports,
Well, I just want to get this other one. And this is the other one from the Animal Planet.
The Australian Shepherd is the ultimate working dog. Did you know that the dog known as the Aussie isn't actually from Australia?
You probably can't hear. I'm sorry about this.
And that Native Americans called these dogs ghost dogs and considered them sacred? Or that these dogs came to fame as rodeo trick dogs?
The Australian Shepherd. They are a very lively, vivacious, and immediately recognized breed.
The Australian Shepherd's ancestors are thought to have originated in the Basque region of Europe. From there, they may have traveled to the early American West by way of Australia.
So, and that's what I was getting at. With the whole slave trade and stuff like that, you're telling me that the Spanish and that the French would travel across the Pacific Ocean, knowing that it's called Pacific because it's rough waters, but yet when they bring their dogs here to use to attack so they can settle the West, they bring them through the peaceful waters of the Pacific. You bring your cargo slaves from the West, from the Atlantic Ocean, where it's rough and there's a chance of them drowning, and that whole theory, that's why the sharks follow this pattern, because they're following where the slaves were dumped off the boats. But yet, you can also do what the Egyptians have done. You can do what the Chinese have done. You can sail from Africa 6 months out of the year in one direction, and then follow that same and take that same route 6 months out of the year back to Africa, back to India, back to Australia. The Spaniards were smart enough to do that route for their dogs and their guns and stuff like that to settle the western area, but they weren't smart enough to do that with their slaves. See what I'm saying?